Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers that cover the NFL on a daily basis. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here's your host, Erin Summers.
Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. I'm Erin Summers. It is Wednesday, and the Saints, well, they have a game tomorrow. Thursday night, primetime football against the Denver Broncos. It is a big game, lots of storylines surrounding this one, and a lot of them have nothing to do with actually what's going to happen on the field. Yes, former Saints head coach Sean Payton is going to be in the building as the head coach of the Denver Broncos, and there are several former players and members of the coaching staff that will be there alongside him. And then at halftime, the legendary quarterback Drew Brees is going into the Saints Hall of Fame. It is going to be a very fun moment. Fans are encouraged to wear black as they're trying to have that blackout in the dome for this big event. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other former players in the building there on hand to support Drew and, man, hopefully see the Saints team get a victory. The focus for the team and the players has been solely on what it is going to take to get that win. On a short week, the Saints are going to have to do it down a few key players. Tight end Taysom Hill, quarterback Derek Carr, right guard Cesar Ruiz, linebacker Pete Werner, and now, as of today, head coach Dennis Allen announced that wide receivers Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed will be out for the game Thursday night. Olave suffered that concussion early in the game against the Bucs on Sunday, and then Rashid left with a knee injury. That injury is going to require surgery. DA said that he'll be traveling to LA to get that done. There are a couple options that are still in play, and from there, that will determine how much time Rashid is going to miss this season, with there being the potential for Shaheed to go on IR. That being said, it's time for Bub Means, Cedric Wilson, Mason Tipton, other receivers to step up. We already saw that chemistry between quarterback Spencer Rattler, who will get his second start, and wide receiver Bub Means, fellow rookie, in the last game Sunday as they connected for a touchdown. So that is something that we'll be watching for again Thursday night. I talked to Bub, and he was not very happy that Spencer took that touchdown ball because it was both of their first. So, Bub's just got to go get him another one. For today's podcast, we are talking to former Saints quarterback Luke McCown. He really did an amazing job breaking down the situation that Spencer Rattler is in, what is required of not only a quarterback stepping in from backup to starting role, but for a rookie and everything that he is responsible for in his first start and how McCown thought he did Sunday against the Bucs. So let's bring Luke in now. Luke, thank you for joining me on the New Orleans Saints podcast. It is a big week. I think a lot of people have had this game circled because it is the Broncos and the Saints, a lot of storylines heading into this one.
Sure.
But how are you doing and what are you looking forward to about this one?
Yeah, listen, I'm looking forward to it a lot. Just, probably I grew up a Broncos fan. I was a big John Elway guy growing up. Like, he was my guy. And so there was always kind of been this special place in my heart for the Broncos. And so now it's a little bittersweet because you got, guys that are near and dear to my heart, and Sean and Lombardi and Pete Carmichael and Joe Vinton. There's a lot of guys that are up there. And so seeing them, donning a color that I'm not used to wearing, and then coming into the Superdome and having that game. And so it's going to be a lot of fun, pulling for the Saints, clearly.
Okay,
and hopefully we get it worked out.
You mentioned that it's going to be weird seeing Coach Payton in different colors in the Superdome on a different sideline, coming out of a different tunnel. The players here are downplaying it. Of course, they want to focus on the game,
Sure.
What happens. Is there some underlying emotion for some of these guys that did play for him?
Yeah, I think so. And not certainly not with any animosity, I don't think. And I'm not quite sure how many players are on the roster today, 30% or whatever, that actually played for Sean. That was 3 years ago, but I do think Sean is very competitive. And he would join in with Drew and us, the quarterbacks, in our competitions that we would have during training camp. And so he's very competitive that way. When we would practice, especially in OTAs and training camp, we'd go, kind of good on good against our defense. There was very much a sense of us versus them, even though we were all wearing, black and gold. It was very much like, hey, we're trying to beat, Cam Jordan and those guys. Like we're trying to, put our best foot forward, even on the practice field. And Sean was very much like that in how he approached practice, even. And so I believe that there's going to be that competitive fire and juice, just because that's who Sean is. And again, not in any ill will type of way, but it's competition. And sometimes the most fun competitions you have aren't necessarily against your enemies, but against your friends. And so I think that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I'm sure I am here for it. I'm sure there will be moments of Cam Jordan on the sideline with Sean and, getting after Bo Nix and really looking forward to those things.
For head coach Dennis Allen, he worked very closely to Coach Payton.
Sure.
I'm sure they know each other, their tendencies very well, and especially the way that the Saints game went against the Bucs defensively. Yeah. How much more do you think Allen really wants to kind of show out in this one and get a big win?
Yeah, I think it's very important. And I see it from both fronts. I mean, the way that we started last week against the Bucs, getting down early 17-0, and then kind of roaring back, and Spencer finding his legs a little bit, and getting into a groove in that first half, to the point where, heading into the second half, you felt like we were in control of the game. Baker had some costly turnovers. Not necessarily all his fault, but some costly turnovers that put the Saints in position. And then the wheels kind of came off in the second half a little bit. And so there's going to be things that Sean looks at, certainly from his offensive mind, looking at what the Bucs did to kind of regain that momentum and get back on track. But I think it's going to be just as important from DA's standpoint to establish early that this ain't like it was last week. We're going to shore up the things in the secondary that we fell short on. We're going to shore up the things from a pass rush standpoint that we fell short on in the second half against the Bucs, and make it a long day for a young quarterback in Bo Nix.
It's two rookie quarterbacks going to be going at it in this one, with Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler. Ironically, they were actually drafted back-to-back as far as quarterbacks go. Of course, there was a lot of picks in between them. Sure. But with Rattler and him getting just his first career start, his first game action period on Sunday, how much improvement can there be from game one to game two?
Oh, I think huge. I think back, from my own perspective and kind of journey, and what takes place from game one, and not really knowing, because you try to bring over the experience from the preseason, but it's just not even close. It's really not. And so you try to bring that experience over and go, okay, I've gotten some snaps in the preseason. I played in the second quarter, so maybe against the second run of guys, or I played in the third quarter, or even I started the game, maybe in that third game where starters sit, or the fourth game when I was, came along, there was 4 games. Yeah. So you want to be able to take that experience with you into a regular season game, but it's just not even close. The speed of it is vastly different. The preparation level from what you're facing on the other side, and then what they've had as far as the amount of time they've had to study you and tendencies from an offensive standpoint, it's just not even close. And so you really don't know what that's like until you get that first start and that first full game in a regular season environment. And so from game one to game two, now you know what it's like. Now you know the speed of it. Now you know how much more as a quarterback, as a young player, as a rookie, you've got to prepare, how much more commands you've got to have, how much quicker your processing has to be. And so I think can be huge improvement from one game to the next, from game one to game two specifically for Spencer. And I'm looking forward to that.
Even on a short week here?
Yeah, listen, I think sometimes short weeks are better because you get right into it. You don't have time to sit around and think about and stew over all the different details. What you'll see Clint Kubiak do, I believe, is take what, and Spencer said it, I heard it in his post game, that he didn't necessarily feel like there was any restriction on the offense as far as play calling goes. And no quarterback, rookie or otherwise, wants to go into the game feeling like, well, I don't have the whole playbook at my disposal. So, but what you'll see is they'll really hone in on what matters. What do we really want to get to? In a short week, you can't. Offenses are known for, especially ones that want to be very multiple in formation and personnel groupings. They are known for sometimes overdoing it, overthinking it, trying to be too perfect with the play call. I think you'll see a condensed version of that to go, this is what we're really good at. This is what we're really comfortable with, because we don't have time to explore all these other things. We're going to get good at what we know we're good at, and then we're going to go execute it at a higher level than we did last week. And so that plays in, as an advantage to Spencer's inexperience or lack of time as far as preparation goes, because he just gets to go do what he's comfortable doing.
It's been funny talking to some of the rookies around here. I mean, they are like, this is wild. I've never played this many games in a short amount of time. But to your point, they're excited about it. They're ready, especially after a loss, to get right back on the field and correct some of those things. Rattler himself said that he needed to chill a little more in the pocket. That was his analysis of his game. He was a little excited. Of course, it's his first start. But he said maybe in extending plays and looking to do a little bit too much. How can he settle in that regard?
Yeah, I think, and again, I just reading some of his comments, he talked about obviously alluding to the fact that he was a little excited, and which is typical of a young player, especially a young player that feels like he's got some athleticism to offer the game and offer the offense. But in the sense of getting the ball out on time, knowing that, hey, a completion is what's most important here. And, I think he said that specifically, actually, in that just get completions and move the chains. Sometimes, young players get, and I was one of them. I was an athletic guy, and I wanted to buy time, and I wanted to run around, and I wanted to make a bigger play. And you learn that, and I've said this before, just in some of the analytical stuff, offensive coordinators, when they draw up plays, they don't draw up a play going, hey, go to number one and then number two, and then just run around and make a play. There's a progression of things for a reason, and it has a purpose. And so you learn that from a young quarterback standpoint, you learn that, man, if I really just kind of hang in and work through the design of the offense, it's more beneficial sometimes, or at least for the most part, without having to, unless there's some necessary moment where I've got to move, it's more beneficial for the offense that I just stay within rhythm and within sequence of the play itself and get the ball up to a check down when need be. And I think you'll see that again from Spencer. He's played a lot of football in college. He's been through ups and downs. It's well documented his time at Oklahoma. He's coming out as a nationally ranked, very high nationally ranked quarterback out of high school, Oklahoma, transfer, all the different things that took place. And so he weathers things very well. You can just kind of see on his face that in terms of adversity, and DA talked about that in the draft process, adversity sometimes doesn't show up for some of these higher picks as early and as often as some of the lower picks and the things they've had to go through, be it injury or otherwise. And so Spencer's been highly touted. He's wildly gifted in arm talent and ability. It's just now putting it all together. And so I'm excited about this young quarterback. I'm excited about what he offers and the experience that he's gaining, not simply just from playing, but by getting to watch a guy like Derek Carr and learn from Derek. And now Derek being kind of moved, at least for the next week or two, to a more of a coaching role where he can really devote attention to helping Spencer grow and develop. I think it's a great opportunity for Spencer Rattler and to show his what he can offer this team for the future.
it seems like the players really have rallied around him, and they've spoken highly of his abilities, how challenging he's made it for them at times as a scout team quarterback in practices.
Yeah.
And the confidence in the way he carries himself translates well. He's not afraid of the moment because of everything that he's been through. But when you're in a game and your number one receiver goes down 3 plays in,
Yeah.
especially it being your first ever NFL game. I mean, how does that complicate things for you and the game plan you might have had going in?
Yeah, really tough. Really tough when Olave is down and unavailable for the game. What it does, I think, is it kind of reinstates, at least maybe not reinstates wouldn't be the word for Spencer, because it wouldn't have been instated anyways, but it reinforces, maybe the better word, the need to just stay within the play design, right? Sometimes you get so or too reliable on or too relying on one guy to make a play for you, and getting locked in on this number one receiver so much that I held the ball too long instead of moving through my progression. So potentially it can be very helpful for him in understanding, hey, there's other guys that can make plays on this team, and guys that I can trust that to make a play when I need it, or they'll be in the right position, or they'll run the right route, or they'll take it the right depth, or make the right adjustment in a route, what have you. I think it can potentially be very beneficial from the standpoint that as a young player, he doesn't lock or put all his hopes and dreams for the play on one guy, on one option.
Sure. There's no tunnel vision, so to speak, there. And we did see him distribute the ball around to some different players. Obviously, Bub Means getting involved quite often, and then Foster Moreau and Juwan Johnson, a little more action as well. Going into this game, it looks like you could be without your top 2 receivers potentially, with Chris Olave dealing with the concussion and Rashid Shaheed, a knee injury from the end of that Bucs game. But there is that chemistry that Rattler has with Bub, because they came in together. They're rookies together. They got a lot of reps together. How important and maybe beneficial is that for both of those players going into this one?
Yeah, tremendously beneficial. I mean, from the time OTAs began from them, it was their reps together. There was probably a few times when Spencer would take a rep that Bubs wasn't his receiver, and Foster Moreau, for that standpoint, probably had a lot of reps at the same time with Rattler. So there's familiarity there. It always helps to go into step into a huddle and look across and look into the eyes of a guy that's just as young as you, and kind of feeling that same moment at the same time. There's some comfort there, I think. And so, but listen, I mean, I think the league, Saints Nation for sure, got a look at a young and up and coming quarterback. That's still got a lot to prove. Nobody's crowning him anything yet, but I think he showed you something. I think he showed you something in a lot of different ways. Number one, not letting a 17-0 deficit get to you early in the game, showing some resiliency to kind of go back and keep hammering away. And then he talked about some of the just subtle adjustments within a play that weren't necessarily scheduled or scripted, that he and Foster Moreau made within a game. There was a naked route out, and he booted out to the left one time and pulled up, and Foster Moreau's running a deep cross or an over route from the backside, and just kind of fills the zone and stops, and it becomes more of a vertical route, and ended up being a huge play for them. And so those types of things are extremely valuable. But those are the things that confidence is built on, both from a player standpoint and from the team standpoint, looking at you going, hey, you know what? He can feel the game, he can feel the moment, and he's got a rapport with guys from OTAs past that he feels comfortable with, and that bodes well for the Saints.
Have you ever been a part of a season or seen a season where you go through 4 different starters at center? this early in the year?
No, actually, and I thought I had it pretty bad my rookie year in Cleveland, where we had, Jeff Fain was my rookie center, and about week 12, I think we had two or three others. He was on injured reserve at some point, and so I thought I had it pretty bad. But this is something I've never seen before.
Yeah, and it's not just your center; it's the other veteran that you had returning in Cesar Ruiz that's been out at right guard. Yeah. It was a young offensive line coming into this season. How would you assess what they've been able to do considering the injuries that they've had at multiple positions?
Yeah, listen, I mean, it's the NFL in itself is a game of attrition, like who's going to last longer, and then after that, it's who can kind of ride the tide, so to speak, in that the next man's got to be able to hold forward a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so I think they've done a good job with that. Again, I think from the standpoint of, what do we have in an offense when, our starting quarterback's out, our starting center, tackle, potentially two receivers now. You kind of look it around and go, okay, well, how good are we as a scheme? And then how good are our young players? And so there's a lot to look forward to. I really, truly believe that there's a lot to look forward to, just from a future standpoint. But yeah, the obstacles, they just keep coming.
Yeah.
And such is the NFL, and it's about how you can handle it. And I think we've got the right guys with the right mentality that can step up and do the job.
Yeah, I think it does say a lot about offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak and maybe even the coaches around him and Rick Dennison and the offensive line coach John Benton and their ability to scheme around what they have available. We saw obviously what a healthy team looked like the first 2 weeks, and things have changed, but that's going to happen. People are going to start to see what you're trying to do and take it away, which is what happened with the Bucs game on Sunday and them adding that extra pressure and blitzing Rattler even more. When you look back on your time here with the Saints, you got thrown into a starting role because quarterback Drew Brees had an injury. What changes for you mentally when you're the backup and that's your role and you're taking those reps during the year and during practices, and then you get told, actually, you're going to start this week?
Yeah. Well, you get less sleep. That changes a lot. You get less sleep, you do more interviews. But really, I mean, if you're the right player with the right mentality, nothing changes. And I said this a few weeks ago on social media. As a backup, certainly later in my career, I really learned how to take every rep, whether I took a physical rep or not. And I remember Lombardi even kind of poking fun at me when I would stand behind Drew during a live practice session. I would stand behind Drew 4, 5, 6 yards behind him and actually work through the rep, work through the footwork, whether it was a handoff or a drop back or a play action pass or whatever it was. I would actually work through it so that as much as I could, I got a physical rep along with seeing it. It also allowed me to see things the way that Drew saw them. So what was really funny at times is when we'd have a drop back pass and our eyes would maybe start in the same spot, but I would go somewhere else and then he'd throw it. And, it would be different in the sense that we just saw things a little differently. Mm-hmm. And so it really helped me as a backup player know how my starting quarterback saw the game. And what that told me was, this is how the guys around you expect you to see the game. And so heading into a game where you didn't know you were going to be the starter and now all of a sudden you are, you lean on those mental reps that you've gotten, lean on what experience you've brought from past opportunities, preseason or otherwise. And then you go play and you rely on instincts, especially as a young player, you rely on instincts. I got that start. That was my, I guess that was my 12th year in my career. And so, gosh, that was a long time ago. And so, than what Spencer's going through, just because I've been around a lot of ball and seen a lot of stuff and been in that offense for a long time. So there was an extra level of confidence and feeling like I could operate it fairly well, which I feel like we did in that Carolina game. Came up a little short, obviously, but yeah, the things that change are just understanding how much faster you've got to move mentally, how much quicker you've got to move through progressions, and with your footwork, and in terms of how fast the pass rush is coming and how quickly I've got to get in and out of the huddle. And so you want to make all of that just kind of as chill as you can, so that when the live part happens, as soon as the snap goes, when the live part happens, that's already chaotic. You don't want the rest of it to be chaotic. You want the play call and the personnel groupings and the formations and all that happens between the spot of the ball and the snap of the play. You want all that to be very just kind of normal, regular, feels like practice. Clint, I don't want you yelling at me in my ear. I want you to call the play to me in my ear the same way you did when we were in the facility there in Metairie. I don't want that to be any different, because when the snap happens, it's going to be vastly different. And so everything else I want to manage the way I would manage, the 5 days out of the week. And then on day 6, when we're playing here, that can be different.
How much onus then is on Spencer to put the ball where these players are used to move the way that they're used to? Because, he's just one player changing a role, whereas these other 10 have kind of been used to having Carr back there.
Yeah. I think it's very important. I mean, we used to talk about how important it was just to have the cadence sound alike. So I tried to sound like Drew, maybe not my country accent, not quite as bad as Drew's, but in terms of how the cadence comes out, we want it to be the same. So that if and when I had to take a snap, there wasn't this dramatic drop off in ready, set, go, or ready, set, hut, or whatever it is, green 18. It needed to be very, very much the same, so that all that Drew had done and all that the rest of the offense had been used to, there wasn't this dramatic drop off or difference in how it sounded, so that we could just get the play going. So there's an element of, how and when the ball comes out, call it a 9-yard stop route. How and when the ball comes out, does it come out with a hitch? Does it come out when, Derek throws it without a hitch? Is it coming out at the same time, same speed? Derek really puts it out here every time. And Spencer's hitting me here. I need to start expecting the ball here. So there's a lot that goes into that. And I'm sure they've talked about that. But it's highly important that Spencer do his best to be himself, and then take the things that Derek does well, and the things that maybe the receivers, the tight ends, even the cadence to the offensive line are used to in the way that Derek sounds and the way that Derek moves and the timing that he throws with, and do his best to emulate that, so that there's continuity between the two guys and the offense, no matter who's playing.
The Saints have a number of players on the injury report, and the Broncos only have one, but it is a big one in cornerback Pat Surtain.
Yeah.
Going into this one and knowing that he might potentially be out, does that give you a little comfort?
Yes and no. I mean, I tried not to, as a player looking back, I tried not to put a whole lot of emphasis necessarily on one guy. There's still 10 spots to fill outside of that one on the other side of the ball, and they're all good players. And they'll come up with ways. Now, Pat Surtain's a great young corner, probably a top 5 in the league already. And I played against his dad. That's how old I am. And so they'll come up with ways to, if that's a glaring hole in terms of who the backup is for them, they'll come up with ways to protect that. And the Saints will expect them to do so, whether it's rolling coverage over the top or making sure that he's never in a press man situation against the receiver that he can't run with. If Rashid plays or whatever it is, they're gonna protect him. So I try not to put too much onus in. Well, this one guy's not playing, so we've got a big shot here. You've still got to go out and execute. My college coach used to always say they've got scholarship players too. They've got guys that are draft picks, that are high picks, that are highly paid, guys on the other side of the ball too. So that's as far as depth chart goes, that's whether it's number 1 or number 3. It doesn't really matter. They're all good players. We've got to go out and play our game. So I try not to put a whole lot of onus or on myself to go out and make a play because that one guy's missing. So we got to play a defense as a whole, and we've still got to play smart, efficient football, move the chains, have positive yardage on first down, limit our 3rd and longs, and be efficient in the red zone with points.
Another big event that's happening on Thursday night is Drew Brees getting inducted into the Saints Hall of Fame. It is going to be, or is already, I mean, he already has several accolades, but it's the first step in what's going to be a bigger one down the line, I'm sure. You know him very well, played with him for a long time here. How cool is it to see him just to get that moment and then what's to come?
Oh man, listen, I mean, there's a process to everything, but I'm shocked that it wasn't the day after he retired. I say that tongue in cheek. Obviously, I know there's a process to everything, but what he's meant to the Saints as an organization, what he's meant to New Orleans as a city, it can't be understated. I mean, and you can only really truly understand it if you've had the time to be around him and how much time and effort and energy and physically and mentally he put into it for the black and gold, for the fleur-de-lis, for New Orleans as a whole. And getting to see that up close and personal for 4 years was one of the great joys of my life. It really is. Because I've often said, I love watching talented people do their thing, whether that's music or football or dancing or riding a bike or shooting a basketball, whatever it is. I like watching talented people do their thing. Love watching Mike Tirico call the Olympics. Super talented, right? I just enjoy that. But when you get around the best of the best that are doing their thing at the highest level, there's something tangible. You can feel that. And so for 4 years, I got to have a front row seat to watch Drew Brees operate as, in my opinion, the best quarterback to ever play the position. What a joy that was. And so when you get to see the hours that he puts in, and I saw it, later on in his career and his body, and everybody talks about when the body starts breaking down and all this stuff in it. And it does, Father Time catches up with you in the NFL. The hits accumulate, the training sessions, the throws, all that builds up. And to watch him give hour upon hour in preparation for the game, studying the offense, giving his input, his expertise, mentoring young guys, not just quarterbacks, but receivers, running backs, DBs, taking guys under his wing and helping them along, was a true joy. And to get to see the culmination of all of that with the records and the accolades and this first Hall of Fame stop on the way to a second one in a couple of years, I couldn't be more proud and happy for my good friend.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun night, and there's a lot around it, but that's going to be a fun moment at halftime when he gets his time and gets that announcement for sure. Yep. I appreciate the time so much. It was great picking your brain about all this quarterback stuff we have going on here. And hopefully the Saints can get this win on Thursday.
Looking forward to watching it.
Awesome stuff from Luke. Really appreciate his time there. And I know he said he's looking forward to that game Thursday, as are we. Tomorrow morning, though, I'm going to bring you another podcast. We're going to break down this matchup between the Broncos and the Saints. Bring in James Palmer, who covers the NFL, lives there in Denver, has a very good pulse on how things have gone for the Broncos this season. So looking forward to that conversation with him. And then it will be game time. Yeah, it's here already. I know, it's crazy. Thank you so much for listening. We'll do one more of these tomorrow before everything kicks off Thursday night.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast.